What's the bigger obstacle in the Reds finding success? Is it the bullpen or is it the lineup?
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Jeff. He's Steve. And on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. A little bit later on, we're going to tell you why this is a must-win series. As much as a June series can be a must-win series, this is a must-win series for the Reds against the Mets. In just a few minutes, we're going to tell you if the Reds are sellers or not, because, spoiler alert, it's a little too early and things are different now. But we will begin with what ails the Reds the most, because I think it's the lineup. As much as the bullpen is the low-hanging fruit, as much as the bullpen has blown a lot of leads, those leads that they've been handled are minuscule, very, very tiny. When you break down the Reds' struggle so far this season, they're just not scoring enough runs, and especially in the situations where they should be scoring enough runs, they are horrible with runners in scoring position. There are stats to back it up, and we will go through those. But the Reds don't score enough to support what isn't a good bullpen, but I don't think it's as horrible as it's been made out to be.
Yeah, it's as horrible as it's been made out to be. I mean, there's going to be stats that says that the lineup is a problem, and you won me over on this a little bit during show prep. But I will say this bullpen has been bad. It has been bad in a way that, the one thing this Red team is consistent at, which is doing something the most frustrating way possible. And the most frustrating way possible that they've been losing with this bullpen and taking 1-run games and turning them into 5-run losses. And it just continues to be a stressor for me and a stressor for the fan base. Now, all that being said, you're right. There are problems with this lineup. It has been bad with runners in scoring position since day one, since opening day. They have had a problem with that. This team seemingly can't just quite put it together offensively in order to get to that magic number of 5 runs a game that you and I talked about all the way back in spring training, all the way back in the offseason, that for this team to be a winner, for this team to compete for the division, for this team to give teams like the Milwaukee Brewers a run for their money, they were going to have to score at least 5 runs a game, and they have not come anywhere close to that.
No, they haven't. And one of the biggest issues with what they've been going through this season has been when runners get into scoring position. The point when most lineups are putting the most pressure on the opposing pitching staff, it's flipped for the Reds. In fact, here recently I've been looking at, since June 1st, this is what the Reds numbers are. They are 66% below league average, according to WRC Plus, with runners in scoring position. The only team that's worse than them, by the way, the team that just took 2 out of 3 against them, the Arizona Diamondbacks. But this is not a sample size problem. This is a season problem. And if you don't like the plus numbers, if you don't like WRC Plus, which, by the way, for the entire season, the Reds are second worst in all of baseball, not just since June 1st, since game 1. They are second worst in all of baseball with an 84. If you want to go old school and talk about batting average, the Reds are last in Major League Baseball with a 215 batting average with runners in scoring positions team. That's never, ever, ever going to get the job done. And that has fed this ridiculously horrible run differential of -58.
I know how much you love when I throw you a side quest in the middle of a segment and I didn't prepare you for it in show prep, but we're going to do that right now anyway, because I can hear the keyboards clacking right now in the comment section. That's just fire Valaika on a loop. And I want to ask you for your thoughts on that, because for me, a hitting coach at the major league level is not particularly a guy that can have an impact right now on the lineup as far as, a total overhaul of a lineup. They can help an individual guy with an individual problem and help them break down film and help them look at things. But that's the work that most major leaguers do in the offseason. This is not, if they fired Chris Valaika right now, whoever the next guy is not going to come in here and overhaul a hitting philosophy, a hitting approach, or batting stances.
No, and quite frankly, the hitting coach comes from on high, or the hitting philosophy comes from on high, whether that's Nick Krall or Terry Francona. It's a strategy that is implemented and executed by the hitting coach, but it is not derived from Chris Valaika. So you can fire Chris Valaika today. The lineup's not going to get any better tomorrow. The lineup is about the talent. And there's just too many question marks in this lineup. For as much as there was a nice little streak that Matt McLain has gone on, he's cooled off a bit. Sal Stewart's cooled off a bit. Even J.J. Bleday has cooled off a bit, albeit J.J. Bleday's now one home run off the team lead. I mean, he's been fantastic ever since he's been called up. But, like, there's too many times that it feels like this lineup on a game-to-game basis is reliant on one or two guys. And typically, those one or two guys are buoyed by two or three guys that are just absolute negatives to whatever is going on. And I point specifically to Sunday's loss to the Diamondbacks, where they lose the rubber match, they lose the series in the 8th inning. They had runners on second and third with one out, and Eugenio Suarez and Noelvi Marte do up. Noelvi Marte had already homered. Eugenio Suarez had already hit an RBI double in this. Like, this was the point where you're like, okay, they can get back in this. Strikeout. Which feeds to another point of this. The only thing in the league that the Reds lead with runners in scoring position is strikeout rate. 25% of the time, they are striking out when they step up to the plate and somebody's in scoring position. That is absolutely ridiculous. You've got to at least put the ball in play, force the defense to make a play, and then, sometimes you can get an error. I looked at this, like, specifically the plate appearances so far this season that the Reds have had as a team with runners in scoring position, 669. Do you know how many runs they've scored in that time, Steve?
Not many, but I don't know the number.
195. That is a ridiculously tiny percentage. And if you want to go by sample size, the month of June, 104 plate appearances, 19 runs total. It's not good enough. Like, I know that the bullpen is blowing leads, but they are being given tiny leads to hold. They are being given leads that Mason Miller for the Padres is going to hold, but you're talking about the best closer in baseball at that point. Like, you've got to have a just amazing bullpen that we thought we had in February and has been anything but. So, yes, the bullpen is a huge problem, but I almost think it's 50-50 here. The lineup bears just as much responsibility as the bullpen.
Yeah, because if we're being fair, if we're being realistic, you go back and look at April and that lights out month that was April. The bullpen really played, for the most part, particularly flawless baseball. Like, every guy out of the bullpen was a closer. Every guy out of the bullpen wasn't giving up anything. And that just wasn't sustainable. You can't expect that. And unless you've gone out and unless you're the Dodgers and you've gone out and signed 8 closers.
Everybody's closers.
That's probably the next thing the Dodgers are going to do. They're just going to go sign everybody's closers. But unless you've done that, there are going to be times where a run is given up. The problem with this team is that is the margin of error. That is what they've been able. One run. And once that's done, we've seen the wheels come off, because this team is not going to scratch and claw its way back into the game for the most part when you have that happen. So, I was one of those that for the last few weeks have been looking at the bullpen and have been looking at the bullpen as being the biggest part of the problem. But the more you break down these numbers with guys at the plate, the more you break down what they have not been able to do with runners in scoring position, the more you start to see a clearer picture of what is going on with this team. Now, Jeff, the question is what can be done to fix it? Because here we are in mid-June nearly, and this team has a lot of flaws. And they're hanging on to their we're still a contender wild card life by a thread. What can they do with this lineup to try and generate some more scoring? Because there's really nobody to call upon for help.
No, and I would like to see maybe a little bit of a dice thrown and you call up Hector Rodriguez. Dude is on fire at AAA. That's really the only in-house option. There's not like a lot of other guys in AAA. So if they were to make a trade, which I doubt this would happen this early for an impactful guy, but like they would have to give up something of consequence to get that guy. And I don't necessarily know that it would be seen as an abject positive right now. Like I saw, what was it? on this day in Reds history of yore, they traded for Tom Seaver. Like that kind of a trade just isn't happening right now because of the way that the landscape of baseball has changed, which kind of leads us into our next point of like, are you sellers? Are you buyers? It's not how this works anymore. Throughout the NHL Finals, every shift matters. Every moment is intense, and everything comes down to the execution when the pressure is at its highest. And just like athletes must be ready to perform when the puck drops, a lot of guys want that same sense of readiness and confidence in their own lives. That's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet offers modern performance-focused treatments designed to help you be ready when it matters most. Their top option, Rugiet Ready, is a fast-acting, clinically formulated treatment that comes in a simple mint that dissolves under your tongue. It's designed for convenience with fast absorption and effects that can begin in about 15 minutes and may last up to 36 hours. They also offer Go Long, which is formulated to support both performance and control for longer lasting needs. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL and get 15% off your ED treatment. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL for 15% off. Rugiet, performance medicine for men. With the World Cup going on, FanDuel makes it even better to watch games because they have a promotion going on right now called Every Goal Pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals means more bonus bets every time you watch, whether that's, Scotland, Brazil, all the other different countries, of course, America. Doing pretty good so far. Hopefully they keep that up. But you can also jump in on FanDuel over on some Reds games as well, like tonight's game between the Reds and the Mets. Looking at the first five, I'm going to continue to say this, first 5 innings. In fact, first 5 innings is actually at a better value than the total money line. For the Reds to be ahead after 5 innings, the odds are -108. So if you take that wager, you put $10 on it, you're going to get like $9 on top of the $10 when you win. And by the way, also looking at Chase Burns going tonight, going to be a big night for him. I feel pretty good about Chase Burns starting. His over-under on strikeouts is set at 7.5. It feels tough to take the over, but I'm going to do it. I feel like he's going to get at least 8 strikeouts against these Mets tonight. Go over to FanDuel.com and join in on all the action right now.
You already live this team each and every day. Elevate your game and join the Everydayer Club. LockedOnPodcast.com/Everydayer is going to get you ad-free Locked On Reds over in the audio feeds. It's also going to get you exclusive access to the Discord servers. That's not just us talking Reds baseball. Every single host from every single show talking ball in there. You are always going to find somebody to talk ball with, or talk smack to, or have some fun sports conversations over on the Discord server. The link for that is down in the show descriptions. $5 a month, $50 a year to join the Everydayer Club. All right, Jeff, this is the time of year where pre-wild card expansion, pre-playoff expansion, we would start to have the conversation. Well, are the Reds sellers? They should be selling. Who are they gonna trade away? What should the rebuild look like? Those days, as you indicated there, the tease coming into this segment, those days are kind of over. With the expanded playoffs, with the new expanded wild card, teams aren't ready to declare themselves sellers right now. Teams still want to cling to that we're in the wild card race. We're only X number of games back of the final wild card. And that's what everybody's looking at. And where in old baseball, you talk about that Tom Seaver trade. In old baseball, teams would be willing to sell off a part like that. They'd be willing to trade and get their value back for a player and then prepare for next year. We're not there yet. Teams aren't ready to say they're sellers. So what it means is we're going to have a flurry of activity closer to the deadline. But teams like the Reds right now can't really declare who they are. Are they going to be buyers? Are they going to go look for a part? Or are they just going to blow it up and try and reload again for next year? I think it's just, sadly, in modern baseball, way too soon to tell exactly who the Reds think they are heading towards the trade deadline.
100% agree with you, because as annoying as it sounds, they're only a couple of games out of the wild card. They're really they're far back of the division. I don't know that they can get back in the division, but the wild card is still there to be had. And there's that old saying that goes true for every team in baseball, is that You just get the dance to get a chance, and you could advance. And so just getting there is enough for most teams. And so the Reds are not going to make this decision lightly or quickly, even though you could argue there's a market inefficiency in it if you do become the first seller. And maybe you go and you start to run up the bidding, you could really start to get your good trade pieces in a good spot and start to reset before other teams are taking offers or anything like that. I do feel like it's almost a understood time frame where if you are a seller, like you have to sit on what it is you're selling until the trade deadline. But if you can go out there and say, dude, we got a couple of interesting players where you got Nate Lowe, we got some interesting bullpen arms that albeit have underperformed, but they are veteran guys that have back of the baseball cards you can trust and things like that. There might be something to that. And then you can reset for next year, because that's the other part of this. The traditional buyer versus seller thing doesn't exist for the Reds, because the Reds cannot blow it up. If the Reds blow it up, they're blowing it up with controllable players that they have for multiple seasons. And could they get back really good talent? Sure. But at the same time, they would be tearing down something that isn't yet built either. So I have a hard time saying that the Reds are sellers. I've seen multiple articles, even in the Inquirer. You know, your favorite writer, Gordon Wittenmeyer, he was talking about the best trade pieces that the Reds have right now. Like, it seems just too early to do that.
Yeah, it's and I think it's habits, right? Everybody's habit is, well, we're mid-June, it's time to do this talk. It's not time to do this talk anymore. You look at the standings right now, Jeff, and where we're at. 10.5 games back in the National League Central. Are they going to make that up? They could, but it's very highly unlikely. To make up that kind of a gap, they would have to go on a St. Louis Cardinals-esque 30-day run where they just didn't lose a baseball game. You look at the wild card standings. Now, you're right. It's much more manageable. The Reds sit right now, as we're recording, 4 games back of the final wild card spot. But you look at the teams that are in front of them, it's Pittsburgh, Miami, Arizona, Washington, and Chicago and San Diego. Those are all of the teams in front of them for this wild card spot. There is a lot of leapfrog that's got to get played there, and a lot of teams that are in the National League Central where the Reds have demonstrated a clear inability to win a baseball game. They just have not been able to win against the division, which is what we said, right? We said way back at the beginning of the season that for this team to find success, they had to be better against the division. And they said, hold my beer, watch us be worse. Watch us not beat this division at all. That's what the Reds have done. So in order to make up ground in the wild card, they have to get better against the division. And I don't know. I don't see it in the tea leaves right now. This team has fooled me before. They love to take the things that you and I say and do the opposite of that thing that you and I say. So now they're going to go out and win the next 6 against the Milwaukee Brewers. That's what's going to happen.
Right.
Because I said they can't do it. But it's not insurmountable, Jeff. You're right. But the deck is really stacked against this ball club right now.
We have said in the past, like, this is what they need to do. This X factor needs to happen. This 50-50 shot needs to go the Reds' way. This, that, and that. Literally all of them have gone against the Reds. So we are officially in the territory of the kid from Angels in the Outfield, where he was going, hey, it could happen. Like, that's where we have to be right now. Like, there's no other real reason as to why it could happen other than it could happen. Like, baseball could baseball in the opposite direction, because baseball has been baseballing in the worst way for the Reds so far this season. And I think there's too many signs for me to continue to be overly optimistic about their chances of making this up. But at the same time, it is a little bit too early here to call. Really quickly, I don't want to get too far into this, but like, there are some guys that the Reds could trade. And there's one guy in particular that I think they would get the most value of, but at the same time should probably invest in and keep, and that's JJ Bleday. They signed him to a 1-year deal, but they have 2 years of arbitration control for him. He is not a free agent until after the 2028 season. That would be a very interesting case, because there's a gamble to be made. And I think that this is really what the trade deadline has become for any team, whether you're a buyer or a seller. We've seen it go the wrong way for the Reds when they were buyers. But if you're a buyer or a seller, you're basically making a gamble. But the biggest gamble of them all is JJ Bleday. Do you buy what he's done? Because if you do, you keep him. But if you sell what he's done, are you going to get the value that you need for him?
Yeah, just a quick look at his OPS plus, Jeff, in his career. His rookie year in 2022, OPS plus of 66. The next year, he went to 88. Now, 2024, he had that big jump, that good season. OPS plus jumped to 120. He had a slash line of 243, 324, 437. But then last season, Jeff, he dropped right back to 82. So he's been wildly inconsistent. Now, this is the second flash of talent that he's shown. He's sitting at 151 right now in OPS plus, current slash line of 266, 361, 570, 12 home runs. I would be inclined to trade him for maximum value because he has shown to be inconsistent, because he has shown to not really be a 150 OPS guy. He's probably more like a 90 to 100 league average OPS guy on the regular. I say you parlay that 150 into whatever you can get for him. But that means the team has to make a commitment to finally, for the love of God, addressing this outfield in an offseason. They haven't really done that. Nick Krall stumbled into this JJ Bleday thing. They need to go get a long-term solution in the outfield. So if you're going to trade JJ Bleday, part of your mind process is you're either getting an outfield prospect back that you think is close, that could be in this outfield next year, or you're making a commitment right at the same time. The very second you send that fax, and they still use faxes, I'm told, to tell the league office about the trade, the second you do that, you're also beginning your search for your offseason acquisition of an outfielder, because you have to have that. You can't trade away JJ Bleday and not have something else.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a preview for our chats when we talk about if this Reds team is going to be a seller at the deadline, because there should be maximum value in a couple of different guys that they could get. But as of right now, I'm sitting here like Leslie Knope. I'm looking at this thing, instead of 99% empty, it's 1% full. We're at last milkshake sip positivity here, folks. And honestly, that's all we got.
There was a lot going on there. Milkshake references from Parks and Rec. I don't know. Look, here's what I do know. The New York Mets are taking on the Cincinnati Reds beginning tonight. And the Reds really, 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 really need to win this series.
Really. Baseball players are known for their routines, whether it's a lucky jersey, a pregame ritual, or sticking to the same preparation every day. Consistency matters. And when it comes to hair thinning, there can be a ton of products out there making promises, but not always a lot of confidence behind them. That's why more people are looking for solutions backed by real science and trusted experts like Nutrafol. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand and the official hair growth partner of Major League Baseball. Look, when it comes to watching baseball on a daily basis, I know for a fact when your favorite team goes to the bullpen, you're probably pulling out your hair. Nutrafol can help with that. Find out why Nutrafol is the only hair growth supplement brand trusted by MLB. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. I mean, when I think of an organization that really seems top to bottom completely aligned and working properly, you got to look at the Milwaukee Brewers. From their minor league system on up to major leagues, it feels like everything is working in sync toward winning. Eventually a World Series, I think, but definitely during the regular season, they've got that on lockdown, because great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. You can keep the conversation going up with us after the show is over on social media. You can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs on X or on TikTok. You can follow Steve at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs over on X. And you can follow the show at Locked On Reds everywhere you get your social media. All right, Steve, the Reds really need to win this series. And as you could tell by all of our reelies, they really, really need to win this series because there's a long stretch of games that, if we're being honest, I think they could just as easily lose every single one of them as go 500 in these stretch of games. So when you look at the New York Mets, they're the one team in the league that I can confidently say is in a worse position, if no better than the same position as the Cincinnati Reds. So this is time for the Reds to beat up on somebody, at least win 2 out of 3, if not take the whole series and sweep it.
Yeah, and we talk about how bad the Mets are. I don't know that the Mets are particularly worse off than the Reds. They're just as bad as the Reds right now. The Mets currently sit at 32-39. They're struggling. They're dead last in the National League East, trailing the Braves by 14 games. And you look at the Reds, they're 33-37, 10.5 back of the Milwaukee Brewers. These are both teams that really need something to break their way. And then if you remember back to that list of wild card contenders that I talked about there a little bit earlier, the Mets directly trail the Cincinnati Reds in the wild card standing. The Reds are 4 games back. The Mets are 5.5 back. So these are 2 teams that are fighting for their relevancy life. So these could actually be some interesting baseball games if both teams take the approach to these games that we got to win them, and they manage them like they got to win them, and they play them like they got to win them. This could be some really good baseball. It could be fun to watch. I think I give the edge to the Cincinnati Reds in this series, Jeff, just from a standpoint of they are just a little bit better off. They are just a little bit further ahead. And they, at least at times, have had stretches of playing good. And I don't know that you can say that about the Mets per se. They really haven't played all that well right out of the gate. So I look at all those things, and I think this is a series, we did say a lot of realies there. The Reds have to win this series. I am often very reluctant to say they've got to go out and sweep. They got to go out and sweep. The minimum here is 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3 for me is not a success in this series against the New York Mets. It's the bare minimum. That's the bare minimum you got to have to remain in the relevancy conversation for the next series. If you don't win 2 out of 3 against the Mets, stick a fork in them, they're done.
No, that's what we are talking about here. And I will say, it's not to say that they are expected as far as odds and favors and all that other stuff. Now, they are favored on FanDuel to win tonight, but the way that this series kind of holds up, the Mets are 6-4 in their last 10 games. The Reds are 2-8. And then when you look at the season long stat of the run differential, the Mets are -11 and the Reds are -58. So technically, some people would look at this and say, well, the records are totally different, but they're not that far off. And honestly, they're not super different anymore, where the Reds only have 1 more win than the Mets do. When the Reds faced the Mets in New York, we felt really good about that matchup. I don't feel so good about this now. I'm just saying they got to do it. And the good news is they at least have Chase Burns going tonight. The Reds should win this game. They should win every game that Chase Burns pitches. It's the next 2 that are interesting to me. And plus, the Mets are also going with an opener. He was an opener for a couple of different times for them. He went down to the minor leagues. Tobias Myers that I'm talking about, he went down to the AAA for the Mets, got more extended with his innings. I think he will actually come up and pitch like a starter because the Mets are looking for their 5th starter. If you go check out what our friend Ryan Finkelstein over at Locked On Mets has to say about this, he has a clear favorite for who should win the 5th starter for the Mets job. But when it comes to what the Reds are facing right here, there's a little bit of a mixed bag because what he has done in the majors to this point has been nothing but relief. And so can the Reds force him to throw a lot of pitches early, a la what they did to Eduardo Rodriguez for the Diamondbacks on Friday night? Can they force that on Tobias Myers? That's going to go a long way in winning this ball game. But then the next 2 are very interesting, where you're facing Christian Scott and Nolan McLean, a couple of guys that are young pitchers, up and coming, and have shown some good stuff in their rookie years.
So the question you've really got to ask yourself, the difference in this series is going to be which Brady Singer shows up and which Nick Lodolo shows up. Because I thought, we talked about this in our group chat, me, you, and Tim Daniel, in the last Nick Lodolo start. I felt like Nick Lodolo leaned in a little bit more on the OG breaker ball than he had in any previous start. And we haven't heard of any issues from that. If he's able to go out there and throw that breaker with the same, at least the same amount of pitches, the same number of times, that's a big difference maker in the game that he brings to the table. The last start out of Brady Singer was probably his best start of the season. And the question is that something he builds upon? Does that guy show up again? Or does he go right back to being that Brady Singer that we were all asking, what is going on with this guy? If it's the Brady Singer we saw in his last start, the Reds can win that game. And that's a pivotal moment in this series, is if Brady Singer can come out and be the Brady Singer of old and keep the Reds in this ballgame.
He's a guy that I've marked here recently that I've been impressed with his turnaround. His last 5 starts, he's starting to look more like the Brady Singer that we saw from last year. Albeit he still has a couple of starts in there that you don't love, but you still see this guy that is coming out and giving you more length, because that wasn't something he was doing early on in the season. Too many starts going 5 innings or less. Brady Singer's a guy that you want to go 6 innings or more. And albeit that 6 innings is never going to be perfect, but what he gave you in his last start, what he gave you 2 starts ago, like, this is more what we're expecting to see from Brady Singer. Hopefully he can build on that against the Mets lineup that, yes, it did just go off against the Braves, but for the most part, they've been every bit as bad as the Reds. And in fact, when you look at the stats that I talked about in the first segment with runners in scoring position and all that, since the month of June began, the 3 worst teams in all of baseball have been the Reds, the Diamondbacks, and the Mets. So can the Reds be the least worst of the Mets and the Reds when it comes to runners in scoring position? Can they hold the Mets down in this? That's going to be a key, and Brady Singer is going to be a key part of that when it comes to game 2, because if you win game 2, I feel like you win this series, because they should win tonight. And I feel good about Nick Lodolo on Wednesday, albeit Nolan McLean is going to be a lot better than the first time we saw him. The Reds got a ton of runs on him in his first start against the Reds this year. But I feel like they can get a win out of that game. It's just, can they win the second game? They'll get that sweep.
Yeah, well, the questions start to get answered tonight. They take on the New York Mets. This is a pivotal moment in the season, and we're going to have you covered for it and everything else coming your way the rest of this 2026 baseball season. Make sure you've clicked subscribe. Make sure you've clicked that notification bell. You don't want to miss anything we've got coming your way. That also gets you the postcast with Tim Daniel live after each and every Reds game this season. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. Now for your second listen audio, folks, go check out Locked On MLB. They've got 3 shows in that feed to keep you covered with Major League Baseball. Sully's got you covered with Major League Baseball from a national perspective. Jeff is filling in over there right now in Back to the Bullpen with former Reds reliever Mike Stanton. And of course, they've got MLB Game Night, watching every single game, every single night, so that you don't have to. For the video, folks, we're going to send you over to Locked On's first ever 24/7 national YouTube channel, where all of the experts of all of the channels of all of the shows. Listen, there's a lot of ball getting talked over there, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We will be back in your feeds tomorrow, and we will have a little bit of news and notes from this Mets games, but also happy birthday. It will be the 10-year anniversary of the Locked On Podcast Network. So we've got a little something extra planned for you on that show as well. So make sure you're subscribed. We'll be back in your feeds, gathering up the news, the notes, the rumors, the reports, and the information to keep you locked on Reds every single day.